In today's video, I'm going to be showing you the first step of the sound design process, which is ADSR. And more specifically, here's a simpler and faster way to understand ADSR so you can get to more exciting steps like making the timbre and making the sound effects. And if you want a deeper dive into this, go to 6stepmusic.com/guide. Now, for those of you who don't know, ADSR stands for attack, decay, sustain, and release. Basically, they're just four things to describe what happens to a sound's loudness when you press and hold a button. So for example, if I press and hold this button, you're going to notice that it plays a different sound than if I change this ADSR to something like this. Now, people like to define the ADSR based off of the attack is when you hold down the key and it moves up to a certain maximum volume until it reaches that volume. And then the decay lowers the volume down to a specific volume to the sustain. And all these definitions that describe what ADSR stands for. I think they're useful to understand, but I think a simpler way to understand ADSR is just to know that it's the shape of the sound. Now, when you go to the ADSR control panels, you're going to notice that we can move around all these parameters and make different shapes. So we can make this shape, we can make this shape, we can make, like this shape. We can make all sorts of different shapes. So then the question becomes, what shape should we make and how should we make it? It seems like there could be infinite numbers of possibilities for the amount of shapes we can make because we can change all these parameters. And the answer to this question is just to look at some sounds. So to demonstrate this, I brought up 9 different sounds and I ordered them in a specific way. And you're going to notice that I grouped them into 3 different shapes. These specific sounds, they kind of go downhill like this. These specific sounds, they go up and then down. And then this specific sound, it kind of looks like a box right here, where it just seems like it's loud all the way through. So you're going to notice that there's really only 3 types of shapes. One is what I like to call the cooling type of shapes. That's the first category. So it's this type of sound, where it starts off really high volume and then it drops into low volume. So the ADSR we're going to make is just going to copy that shape. So you can see here that the shape is going to be very similar to that cooling type of sound. So if I play this, it's very similar to the shapes of these 3 sounds. Now I can change how it cools down. So for example, maybe I want it to cool down like this, or maybe like this, or maybe like this. But the idea of the cooling shape is to have a very high volume at the very beginning and then a lower volume towards the end. The second type of shape is going to be the warming shape, just because the sounds sound like they're warming up to something. Now in these types of shapes, the volume slowly increases up until the middle point and it starts to drop off like this. Same thing with this one, as you can see, if I move closer, and same thing with this one. So the warming ADSR is going to look something similar. It's going to look like a sound that slowly moves up in volume and then drops in volume. So it's going to sound like this. And again, just like the cooling ADSR, you can change the ADSR to maybe something like this, or even like this, or even like this, or even like this. Any of these will still work because we're still hitting that warming style, which is the lower volume beginning, higher volume middle, and then lower volume end. The final ADSR style is what I like to call the box style, and it's basically just a sound that holds its volume throughout its entire length. Now, just like the other 2 sounds, the ADSR shape is going to be very similar. It's going to look like a box, like this. So if I play this sound, you're going to notice that throughout the entire sound's length, it just maintains its volume. I would encourage you to take a listen to some of the sounds you like and look at the shape of the sound. What you'll find is that the shapes will fit into one of these 3 categories right here. And if you want to reproduce that sound or create another sound that's similar to it, the first step you need to do is just copy the shape of the ADSR. So either a cooling ADSR, a warming ADSR, or a box ADSR. Now there are some sounds that initially might not fit these 3 categories like this sound right here. Until you realize that this sound is really just a warming ADSR repeated over and over again. In other words, you can make a similar type of sound by just repeating one of these sounds over and over again. When you realize that almost every single sound out there that you hear either takes form in one of these 3 shapes or is a repetition of one of these 3 shapes, it makes recreating sounds or building sounds a lot easier as far as designing the ADSR for that first step in the sound design. And again, if you want to deeper dive into this to understand how ADSR concepts are used to create actual songs, click the link below this video or go to 6stepmusic.com/guide to get a free guide on how to do this. I hope this was helpful and thanks for watching.